Hey Dreena, how's it going?
Good. Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dreena Burton is the author of 5 best-selling cookbooks that chart her journey as a plant-powered cook and at-home mother of 3. She's one of the pioneering vegan cookbook authors with a loyal following and reputation for reliable, wholesome recipes. Dreena has appeared on television and radio and has written for Yoga Journal and Today's Parent, among others. Learn more about Dreena at www.plantpoweredkitchen.com. It's really an honor to talk to you today. I'm really excited to hear about your new book. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited is because I get a ton of questions from people who have kids, and they want to know, how can I help my kids eat healthy? I mean, there's all kinds of questions that come up, and you have a ton of experience. So I'm really excited to talk about some of the nuances of raising kids in a healthy way.
Sure. Yeah, I have the experience from birth to 14. Anyone who has questions after 14, I don't know. I'm just hitting teen years, so.
Yeah, but that's exciting.
But yeah, I've been through a lot of the stages with, most of the parents have issues, especially when they're toddlers and they're very picky about foods, and not because they're choosing to be picky to kind of like get power with you,
right,
which they do a little later, but just because they're toddlers and they're exploring food and they're busy and they don't want to eat so much because they're busy.
Right.
And then you get into picky stages where, they're kind of playing power trips with you a little bit. And then it, for me anyhow, it really leveled out as they started to get older. And now that my eldest is 14, she eats just about everything, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. So you have 3 girls, is that right?
Yes.
And so you have a 14-year-old. What are the other ages?
Yeah, she's almost 14, and then 10 and 5, almost 6.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Very important you say they're almost that age, because they always want to be that much older.
Yeah, that's great. So I wanted to start off talking about pregnancy, because I think this is the beginning of it.
Right.
And I think it's one of the areas too where people start to run into unsupportive, whether it's family or friends or even people in the medical establishment that are worried about your health and the health of the child. Did you run into any of that? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I mean, pregnancy is particularly hard because there are all these like rules that a woman sort of feels are thrust upon her when she becomes pregnant. Like, you must have these vitamins and you can't eat this and beware of this toxin in this. And it's like, you feel like you're walking into a minefield of things that are going to cause you problems in a pregnancy, when really women have been having babies for centuries around the world and on various diets and, with healthy babies. We sort of micromanage our experiences with pregnancy and life in general, I guess, where we live. And so it was definitely, the first time was challenging. I was lucky that in Canada, you can choose to either go with a midwife or a GP for your pregnancy. And I started with a GP, and I wasn't really feeling the groove. Like, I just felt I couldn't ask enough questions. I'm someone that needs to ask a ton of questions, and I wasn't getting the information from her that I felt I needed. So I switched to a midwife, and she was pretty open-minded. So for my first pregnancy, she was like actually very supportive and open-minded, and it was pretty good. And then with my subsequent pregnancies, because I had already done it, I felt confident enough. And again, I had midwives, and through the years, more information came out. So it was, a little bit more accepted, certainly far more accepted now than when I was having children.
Right.
That was 15 years ago, and then even 10 years ago. Now there's a great deal more support for going into pregnancy with, eating plant-based. But it can be challenging. I think you really do have to find that care provider who's going to not just accept it or say it's okay, but help you if you feel challenged along the way, because you're going to hit things that come up that you wouldn't expect. And I was super nauseous through my pregnancies, like all 3 of them. And with my third, it got to the point for about, maybe 2 months, I could only stomach white foods.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the opposite of how I eat. Right? So I was eating like white pasta, white potatoes, which I don't mind white potatoes, they're good, but all the white refined, but I really couldn't stomach much else, fat and fruit. Anything green, I would just be so sick. I was sick anyhow. So if you have someone that can help you understand that, as long as you're getting some nutrition and your baby's going to be fine, your baby kind of takes whatever it needs from you. So really, you're the one that suffers ultimately,
Yeah.
not the baby. But just to have someone that helps you through those things, because it could be cravings or nausea or just, any other experience that comes up that you have no anticipation might happen.
It seems like people have sometimes they themselves will start to doubt what they're doing.
Yes.
Is there, and I think that it's great what you say, having someone that really understands and supports, not just putting up with your beliefs and your ideals and what you want to be doing, but that really truly understands it and supports it. I think that would be really helpful with that too.
And I doubted it too. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I didn't go into pregnancy thinking, is this going to be okay? Like, am I going to be okay doing this? I don't know anybody else that has done it. My family was very traditional. I even had, a few family members say, well, you're not going to be vegan while pregnant, are you? And I thought, well, why would I change everything I'm doing now and start eating things that I know are not good for me and I don't want to eat? Ultimately, I wanted to give my child all of what I thought was beautiful and nutritious in the plant-based diet, give that to my child. So I certainly doubted it too. It's human too. When it's not mainstream and it's not what everyone thinks is normal or accepted, it's perfectly normal to doubt that, right?
Yeah, cool. That's great. So picky eaters, I mean, obviously that's such a huge thing. You hear that time and time again. And in your book, I mean, you go into such detail. You have so many good strategies and tips and things for dealing with that. One thing that I hear a lot of is people that are, they have not been vegan, they have not been plant-based for their whole lives or for the lives of their child. They're just starting to make this transition. Do you have any specific tips for somebody who's starting to introduce this way of eating and it might be something that the kids are really not used to, of how to, just to start them in the right direction of eating healthier foods?
That's a good point because my kids did grow up with it, with me. And so I do hear from parents who are trying to make that transition themselves or with their kids and their kids are already 10 or 14. And, when they're 10, they're still pretty open. When they hit the teen years, they start to think everything you do is not cool anyway. So just, don't bother.
Yeah.
But it's really important to model, I think, and to just keep serving it and serve good food that you think they'll like those flavors. So if they like particular dishes and they like those flavors, then it's easy to do some of the swaps. Whether it's maybe you start with some meat substitutes that they will think it's very similar to ground beef, and you can swap in the veggie grounds. Then next time try doing something like I made a taco dish the other day, and I just mashed and squished the heck out of chickpeas, and you get a similar texture.
Yeah.
So just kind of take steps with it, but work on the foods they love. It's a lot harder to come in with a dish that's very exotic and say, look at this, we're eating healthy now, and they're saying, Mom, we don't want this new crazy food.
Right.
So just start from the fundamentals of what they like. If they really like potatoes, I mean, my kids are spud heads. They just love potatoes and sweet potatoes. So if I can give them pretty much anything with potatoes and avocado, and I can mix in a few other elements and they're happy. So that's what I always say to parents is find the things that they already love and then try to kind of work the other foods in around it or as part of it, and always model it, because if you're kind of falling off the wagon or moving back, they're going to see that too. So the more you can stick with it, obviously it helps. And with little kids, I mean, when I first heard this rule of thumb, I thought it was crazy, but they say for little kids, you can introduce something up to 20 times before they will try it or accept it.
Wow.
And that's really frustrating as a parent to put, broccoli or even if it's quinoa, it may not be a vegetable. Some kids don't like nuts, or some kids don't really like certain grains. So it's really frustrating to put that on a plate 15 times. You're thinking, is this the night you're going to eat it?
Yeah, that's crazy, 20 times.
But yeah, it's just that repetition of continuing to present that choice to them.
Yeah, I have 3 nephews and a niece. And every time that I go visit, I have all my foods that I take with me. And in particular, I always get a bag of spinach because that's just one of my go-tos.
Yep.
And I've had this experience so many times with this particular nephew. And I'm always just, eating my spinach. And he's like, what's that? I was like, oh, it's spinach. You want to try it? He's like, no.
Keep doing it.
Yeah, it's good to hear that maybe I just haven't hit the
Are
20
they
time mark yet.
open to some other things? Like, do they want to try any of your other foods that you're eating? Or
Yeah, they'll try some other things.
okay, that's good.
Yeah, yes, it's really fun. Um, so in the book too, it's really great. You're talking about substituting um, healthier versions of foods that they already like.
Yeah.
And I just want to bring this up because I think it's amazing the charts that you provide in the book, where you have for whether it's packing lunches or it's party foods. You provide some really great ideas for substitutions, and it's just
Thank
listed
you.
out one, two,
Okay.
three, four, five. So I just want to
Right.
mention that it's really a great resource. Um, it seems like, and at one point you bring up in the book how we have to make these compromises in a certain sense. It's like if kids are going to be eating hot dogs, it's better for them to be eating veggie dogs. But
Right.
if we're from this, whole food, plant-based perspective, that's not really the ideal of what we want. Um, but I do think it's important to have that real life perspective, and maybe you can just talk about that, how
Yeah.
you do have to embrace some of the gray areas and do what you can to move them in the right direction and let go of these ideas of perfection that we have.
Absolutely. I mean, with children, they're in this realm where kids are eating highly processed foods every day at school. They see
Mm-hmm.
it at school, they see it at birthday parties. And my kids eat really wholesome and a lot of, very natural whole foods at home. But when they go to a party, I'm not going to send them with, a tub of quinoa and chickpeas.
Mm-hmm.
I do the replacement that they're having at the party. So I'll
Yeah.
always ask the parent ahead of time, because it's always pizza or hot dogs. Like, that's for 14 years of parenting. I went to a birthday party last week and there were sandwiches, and that was the first time in 14 years that I've seen sandwiches. They were
I
like
was just
egg and tuna.
I was
So
reading that in the book, and I was just laughing out loud how much you emphasize that it's always pizza and hot dogs.
it's always
It's
pizza and hot
hilarious.
dogs and just cheese pizza. Kids don't, none of the kids have veggies on it. So I'll find out in advance, and I'll always bring the substitute. I'll make the veggie hot dog in advance. Sometimes I'll pick up a bit of pizza. We have a couple of local places that have the day of cheese now. And I think that's wonderful because for my kids, they've always been super accepting
Mm-hmm.
of our foods and eating them with their friends. And even though they can see that their food is different, they've still felt very okay about it
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
confident about it.
That's
But
great.
they do love having something that looks even more like that piece of pizza. So, like with
Uh-huh.
Daya cheese on pizza, it looks so much like their friend's pizza that it just feels like they're part of that scene.
Uh-huh.
So, I think we just have to see that what we do 80% of the time,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we're doing at home, or 90% of the time, that's really what it's about. And that's where the fundamentals will, be instilled with them. And then, yeah, let it go those other
Mm-hmm.
times. It's not going to hurt them. And
Yeah.
I come from a whole foods perspective too, but I have Daya in the fridge, and I don't mind using it for school lunches and some other things because sometimes you just need it.
Yeah.
And with school lunches, there's a lot of nut allergies, so you do have some, like, I would put cashew cheese in my kids' lunch every day, but I can't
Mm-hmm.
with nut allergies. So you have to have that little bit of flexibility for those social situations.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that perspective is great. Um, do you do you worry about your kids being the odd ones out in terms of fitting in? And I know
Yeah.
we go through these certain stages where it is really important to have that sense of belonging and that sense of fitting in.
Yeah. I don't, because I don't feel it from them.
Mm.
If I felt it from them, then I would. But there's times that they come home and they tell me stories sometimes that one kid says something like, "Oh, you have a sandwich that's vegan." They don't even know what it means. But what happens is the parent finds out we're vegan, so they say, "Oh,
Uh-huh.
they're vegan," and because I'm sure the 5-year-old doesn't know what that means, but
Right.
they say your sandwich is vegan, and that's gross. And my kid says, "No, it's not." you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's been so many circumstances where funny things have come up, and they've been okay with it, and they tell me about it, and I ask them how they're feeling, and they're usually fine. If I felt like it was an issue, then I think I'd have to deal with it in a sort of a deeper level with them and
Mm.
talk to them. But kids are naturally also very compassionate and love
Mhm.
animals and love nature and love living beings. So
Yeah.
once they know that their friend is eating chicken and that really is chicken, and they start to make that connection of, Mom, why don't we eat it? And we say, well, we had a cat for a very long time, and I said, well, Sarabi's our cat and we love her, we wouldn't want to eat her, so it's not that much different if someone's eating a chicken. Like, they're about the same size and it's still another living being. So they get all that connection, and for them it just sort of like fits together, and it's easy to understand, and they're happy about it. And the other thing for us is our girls are pretty connected with some sports. Our two girls play hockey, and they're very busy with it. And they have such like good connections with the girls on those teams that I think they just feel like, that's their buddies, and they're happy. And I'm always, if there's a team event or something, I'm happy to bring a big batch of cookies, and that makes everyone happy. And then they're like, Mom brings the cookies. Yeah, I mean, I think you really just have to gauge on the kid. All kids are different too. Yeah. Our eldest is very, very secure, and like people could say anything to her and she seems to just be like, whatever, I'm the best, I'm awesome, who cares? Whereas my younger girls are a little more sensitive. So I can see where I have to kind of work the situations a bit differently. Yeah.
Do you worry about what your kids eat out of the house? Obviously you send them with an alternative, if they're going to a party or something like that. But you can't control every situation.
No, you really can't.
Yeah.
No, you can't. With my older girls, I know that they will look at it or ask, does this have dairy or does this have meat? And my eldest, she really could not be bothered. Like, her friends are eating Big Macs, and they do sometimes, and she just doesn't even want it. Like, she's cool to have her food, and so I know she's not going to say, "Oh, can I try it?"
Yeah.
Or take a bite. And I always pack way too much food for her. I pack her far more than she needs, so that there's no excuse about being hungry.
Right.
But with the younger ones, I mean, I remember one in particular time that my middle girl went to it was a school party, and someone had brought in bread, and she loves bread. This girl, like my kid, she just loves bread. So she was eating all this bread, and she was quite sick after. And I said, "Hun, did the bread look a little bit different?" And she said, "Well, it was just like white bread." I said, "Maybe, did you think it might have had cheese in it?" And she said, "Oh, it did have some like orange stripy things on it." And I thought, it probably had cheese. So for sure she ate cheese, like those baguettes that have the cheese melted into them. And I said, you probably ate cheese, and it's okay, just we'll let it go. These things happen, they do, and they don't always know. But then it makes them understand for the next time just to check and be sure. But I'm not worried about them doing it like behind my back, because at least not at this point. They really love their food, and so I don't feel like they want to. They do like the odd junk food and stuff, so if the kids are eating candy that they can eat, they'll dig into that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've got 3 perfect kids.
They are, and they never fight, and they always clean their rooms.
That's amazing.
And they never talk back to me. No.
So in the hypothetical situation that they decided that they wanted to go in a different direction, at what age would you say that it's appropriate for them to start making their own decisions? Or, how would you deal with that situation?
I've kind of said to them, when, like, especially my eldest, because we have these conversations about, when she's older and what she wants to do and that kind of thing. And I say, well, if you're out on your own and you want to start cooking other foods, that's your choice. And she's like, well, I don't eat that stuff. And I said, that's okay, cool. But I'm just saying that's your choice. But like, this is what I cook here. So, it's up to them. When they're off on their own and doing their own things, that's their lives, they can kind of do that. I'm not going to cook meat or prepare dairy in the house. So that's just how it goes. And yeah, for me, like I say in the book, it's that people always say, well, it's so hard to be vegan, and how do you parent being vegan? I say, parenting is the hard part. It's not the vegan part of parenting. It's just the parenting part. So like really the vegan part for me is just part of living, and it's easy. It's all the other stuff of parenting that's challenging. So
definitely. Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it. I'm so humbled and amazed whenever, I go and stay with my brother, and he's got his 4 kids. And I mean, it's just incredible, the selflessness, how much they give to their kids, and it's just really an incredible thing.
It's utter chaos too, right?
It is absolute chaos.
It's chaos. You learn to live in a state of chaos, basically.
Yeah. So that's a good segue, actually. So you give some really good tips in the book as well about how to stay organized. And what I found too is there's a little bit of learning curve when people go plant-based, but once you get the basics down, it doesn't necessarily take that much more time or effort.
No.
But it does take a little bit more organization and planning. So how much more important is that when you have kids, and what are some of the things that you guys use at home to stay organized and on top of meals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a really, I totally agree with you. I say to people, it doesn't take any more time to prepare a plant-based or vegan meal than it does to prepare a meal. It's just about preparing foods.
Right.
And we've really gotten away from just preparing whole foods. It's kind of like, what are we pulling out of the freezer? And you need some quick fixes too. I've got cans and boxes and things in the freezer. But, if that's all you're doing, you're not preparing food, you're just heating it up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just takes, the same amount of time. It's just finding your new ingredients and working with them.
Right.
For me with kids, because our schedule right now, it's not so busy because the kids are finished hockey, but during hockey season, they play every day.
Wow.
One of them is playing every day or practicing every day, and they're going out the door, and I'm packing food for them to go. And so for me, I have some certain foods and items that are in heavy rotation all the time. Like my readers will know I make these tamari roasted chickpeas. I have them in the book too. I make about a triple batch of those, maybe twice a week, because my kids just eat them like popcorn. They'll sit at lunch and they'll eat a whole bunch of them. If they're going out, they'll want to take some. I put them in lunches, and then things like rice and quinoa and grains that we like a lot. I mean, there's certain whole grains that my kids really don't like amaranth. They're not really fond of, or millet. So I just don't spend a lot of time preparing those because they're fussy about them, but I'll work on the other whole grains. So when I do those, I'll do bigger batches and keep some in the fridge for another meal, because I can work those into veggie burgers or combine it in a stew, or, even last couple of nights ago, I just gave them some quinoa, and I had made some fresh hummus and put that on top and gave them a few veggies and avocado. They were happy. Again, if avocado was on it, they're happy. So
that's how I am too. I'm the exact same way.
Avocado's life, right? So I always keep a lot of avocados in the house at a different stage of ripening too. At any point, I have about a dozen avocados in my fridge. So I think it's about finding your few key dishes that your family really likes and batch cooking them a few times a week. Whether it's a stew, get a big one of those in, and put some in the freezer, or some basics that can go into foods like cooked beans or, whatever greens you might be using, and just having those essentials on hand. And sometimes it feels like you're in a rut with recipes because of it, but essentially it keeps your life smooth, because you're not looking to what you're going to make within 20 minutes.
Yeah. Do you freeze grains or beans or anything like that?
I don't love the texture when I freeze them. They kind of get a little bit watery after you thaw them. But for kids, they don't always care. You can reheat them and just, if you're mixing it with something, I think it's fine. I think adults might be a little bit more, picky about the texture than kids with grains. And they freeze pretty well in stews and soups too, so that works. But I always find there's ways you can repurpose certain dishes. If you make a big pot of spaghetti sauce with lentils, for instance, well, one night then that can be with your pasta, but maybe another night you layer it in lasagna, or you work it into a wrap with some other foods, and just try to repurpose those different components. I use potatoes a lot, and I'm always repurposing those into wraps or sandwiches, or making, working them into a sauce or something. So just cooking some of the basics that you love and keeping those fundamentals pretty much in regular rotation. Yeah.
Do you meal plan, or do you schedule when you're going to do the batch cooking, or is it just kind of on an as needed basis?
It is, yeah. I think I probably should meal plan in a way, but I have it sort of all in here, and I'm always baking. I bake probably 4 or 5 times a week, and make muffins or whatever for them for school lunches. So that's another thing that I do. But if you can't, if you don't have time to bake, then just find some healthier options, at the store, Lara bars or some snack foods that they take with them. And I kind of just go with it and work with kind of the seasons and what's out there and what we're feeling like. I
Yeah.
just make sure every day we eat beans though, because I think it's really easy for people to forget about the bean group.
Yeah.
And it's really important to get beans in your diet, or I just think you kind of you can get into a stage of the vegan diet if you're moving into it where you're just eating like a lot of pasta and rice and not getting those beans into your diet and
Right.
seeds. So I just make a point that they're always getting beans somewhere through a meal.
Okay, cool. So your book has so many beautiful recipes. I mean, I was looking through the pictures and I was just salivating. And I definitely wanted to talk about kids and raising kids and some of the intricacies of that. But I do want to talk about the recipes just a little bit. So what's your favorite recipe from the book and why?
Oh, that's a hard question. And thank you. And this is my first cookbook that I have photos for all of the recipes. So that's been super exciting for me. Nicole Axworthy was my photographer, and
she did a
just
great
makes
job.
everything look so bright and beautiful. And
They're gorgeous.
yeah, I really, there's a few in there that are a few that are from my older books that I just kind of revamped and made a little more like healthy, or just a little new twist on them. And so there's a few in there that are favorites, and that's why I put them back in, because they are like true favorites for us, like the mellow sniffle soup. That one has been with our family for a long time, and our girls love it. So that's one. There's a recipe in there for saucy barbecue chickpeas with green beans. And I really like that one. Let's see, there's a bunch of sauces in there that I like too. The cashew cream, and there's so many. The crazy brownies are awesome. The crazy brownies with the ganache are pretty crazy. They're really, really good. Yeah, there's a lot. It's hard to choose.
Yeah, I bet. Well, that all sounds really good, Dreena. So if someone wants to learn more about you or to buy your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, they should just pop to my site. It's plantpoweredkitchen.com. And I just posted about the book actually about 3 weeks ago. So I have a post on there now, and I'm doing some site redesign. So hopefully soon it will be all freshened up and have all the information there. But there is a post on my book, and then my social media links are there too. So I've linked to my book through there too. So yeah, just to my site, and then the links to Amazon and everything are there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. This was such a joy, and it was so fun to hear about your family and learn more about what you do to keep your kids happy and well fed.
Thanks for having me and bringing it out to your readers. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of luck with the book
Bring the chickpeas to your nephews next time.
I will.
Yeah, do them. I bet you they'll love them.
Okay. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Bye.